Welcome back to Scrap Farm, the podcast/newsletter where I talk about starting a farm while running a farm amid a climate crisis. First off, happy birthday to my father. That was for yesterday, the 8th of October. Here's a cute picture of him and my baby sister next to some dahlias that were definitely never smuggled. I have very fond memories of being on the allotment with him, too small to understand the magnitude of plants, but big enough to eat a whole artichoke head on the reg. Housekeeping, not that my father turning 49 for the 19th time is housekeeping, of course, out of the way. Time for the heavy stuff. At times I find it quite hard to strike the balance, to show the scenes of pastoral life while also paying heed to the climate changes that are underway. Anyone seen the first of its kind hurricane, Kirk, heading towards Europe for Wednesday morning? Or Milton, that's going from a Cat 1 to a Cat 5 in a matter of hours? And reaching the mathematical limit for a hurricane. The devastation wrought through Asheville, North Carolina is still so fresh, and it's not a sneak preview of the years to come. This is it. It only gets worse. All lighthearted, great way to start. Crops and cyclones aren't the only things on my mind of late. It has been a year since the siege on Gaza began, since Israel let loose their colonial fury in unrestrained and violent ways, more brazen than ever before. It has been a year of genocide on all our screens and shit all done to stop it. Not to mention the ongoing displacement, murder, modern slavery, not limited to the Congo. It feels flippant to talk about winter squash harvests and cutting down the okra next to a backdrop of genocide. And to mention them just briefly feels just like lip service, to simply cover my ass so that history looks favourably on me. And it is not the intention, but it may be the outcome. As I write this newsletter/podcast, I try not to go off scope. I've been trying to focus on what I stated I would talk about. The current farm, the future farm, the search for land, the realities of farming, small scale and as ethically as possible within the bounds of late stage capitalism. But my God, it feels so small. Pastoral in like the worst sense of the word. So insular and insulting. All of these problems are connected. Climate change is interwoven with colonialism, which is tied to land use and water access. None of this exists in a vacuum. But how the fuck can I reconcile writing about planting spinach while more than half of Gaza's farmland is now damaged by conflict? At times, honestly, I can't. So here are some current farm updates. As the season comes to a close, I finally had a chance to catch my breath. Whether it's been the unrelentingness of being one of the only full-time employees or juggling the present and the future, in truth, my partner and I are burning out. We're too tired to think straight. And yes, it feels whiny to say that within the same few sentences as literal genocide. But it also points to the realities of the time in which we live, where people are too tired just trying to survive to look up and realise that everyone else around them is suffering too. You can still know it. You can still stop in your tracks every so often, and you still have to pay rent. You still have to go to work. And then I included a meme that is a Venn diagram that says apocalypse and having to go to work, and then an arrow pointing at the middle, and it says somehow we ended up here. So we went to work. We paid rent. The squash field, which has all been all but abandoned after 2 mass weeding events, has managed to yield a metric fuck ton of winter squash, as well as some beautiful pumpkins for the most intrepid yew pickers. Most of the squash we've been harvesting at one point, about 800 pounds a day, have been found with our feet. As we push through the heavy grass that has grown up, we happen upon ankle-turning, hard and delicious prizes. You may ask, and it would be fair to, why the weeding got so out of hand. After talking about planting the full 5 acres by hand, we had several successful rounds of eco-weeding. This involved driving the tractor between the rows of squash and dragging a contraption, the eco-weeder, behind, which was spinning claw hands rip out weeds. The problem comes when the squash plants decide they don't want to grow in perfect straight rows anymore, and instead want to venture into the pathways, which is perfectly normal and natural. They're in search of nutrients and sunlight. Apparently, squash plants don't like getting run over, so our weeding gets halted in its tracks. For anyone asking why we don't just use herbicides, I would say that mass extermination in any form is pretty unconscionable and leave it at that. So we harvested squash, and there's still more out there. We've also taken down our tomatoes. Gone, done, dusted. We have put down some absolutely beautiful silage tarps on our weediest blocks. This will take advantage of a process called occultation, where the tarps will trap the last of the October sun and bake the plants underneath, allowing weed seeds to germinate but not giving them any light until the tarps are removed in spring. This is one of the many ways to prevent weeds organically, and honestly favourable to having to weed manually, which will happen eventually no matter what we do. Although over time the seed bank has been depleted, and if tillage remains off the table, it will get easier each year. The cucumbers are still growing strong at the moment, which is a surprise and not likely to last. We have some cold nights coming up and those babies are basically toast, but I will make one more dish with them while they're here because that's seasonal living. Speaking of, my partner and I have eaten a winter squash every single day for the past couple of weeks. All of the ones that are about to rot as they cure in the greenhouse. We've been loving the sunshine kombucha, the desert spirit culinary landrace, and along with the delicata, a classic. They've been cooked simply, sliced, tossed in olive oil, salt, and baked until browning, dipped in sriracha mayo, and dang, that is autumn right there. Over the coming weeks, we'll be extracting more plants. This Saturday marks the 24th and final week of our CSA. It could not come sooner. I think possibly a CSA that runs for nearly half a year with no break is a lot. I will be glad to be taking it slightly slower no matter what we do next year. After the final CSA pickup comes the team potluck, and then in just 3 weeks we'll fly to London. Future farm updates. We're flying to London for my cousin's wedding. Sorry to get your hopes up about the future farm. We are currently in the hushed silence waiting period as our business plan is being read by landowners we sent it to. No pressure, no big deal. Thank goodness no one is panicking. But for real, I have managed, finally, after a long conversation with my mother, been able to obtain some peace on the matter. Nothing is getting sorted this week, or next week, or honestly even next month. I have now promised myself no decisions until December, and since it seems at this point I'm too fraught to do anything let alone smartly, and that is pretty freeing. I'm hopeful for the land in the UK. I've put out feelers for jobs that I can get to help with the visa process and the initial starting a business costs, so it'd be smart to have a job on the side. My partner and I have talked about Plan B and Plan C and several others. And none of these plans need a decision right now. So if we wind ourselves up over it, we're going to be worse equipped to make those choices. Capitalism wants us to rush. It wants us to believe in scarcity, that if someone else has something, it means I can't have it too, and that is a lie. And I can't be asked with it. So we're going to work on our business plans. We're going to hopefully talk to the landowners, and we're going to make something work. But first, rest. And actually, honestly, a bit more squash to harvest. Bye.